Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Patriot's History of the United States. Was gone last Friday at the William Tell Top Gun air exercises. You'll be seeing some photos soon, but I was on a panel with Colonel James Harvey, one of the Tuskegee Airmen, maybe the only surviving Tuskegee Airman from that era. He's 100 years old, and his team won the first ever Top Gun competition. I think the Army Air Force called it Red Flag. I'm not sure, but it has since been renamed Top Gun. And Tuskegee Airmen's team won it in 1949, flying P-47 Thunderbolts, which is a good plane. I mean, it's a very good plane, but it's not the best fighter plane. It's more meant for ground support, flying in close to troops and shooting at the enemy on the ground and firing rockets on the ground and dropping small bombs, that kind of stuff. But it was what they had for their fighter, air superiority fighter, against white units that had P-51 Mustangs, which the Mustang was best airplane of World War II by far. And yet the Tuskegee Airmen won it. So it was quite an honor to meet Colonel Harvey. I've got a great picture with him. We, as I said, shared the stage on a panel discussion. So that's where I was Friday. So we're ready to pick up here at Patriots History. I'm Larry Swikart, and of course, Michael Allen and I wrote Patriots History of the United States back in 2004. And I am reading from the 15th anniversary edition. Came out in 19. And if you have an earlier edition, as I always say, it's probably going to be fine. If you go back too far before 2010, certainly the pages are going to be off and possibly some of the headers will be off. But you can pretty much figure out where we are. We're in chapter 5, Small Republic, Big Shoulders. And we're now at the header. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. So before I dig in, let me just mention a couple of things. First, in addition to these free programs that I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and most of you are probably here because we have the curriculum available for you. If you haven't seen it, check it out on the Wild World of History website. A full curriculum for U.S. and world history. The U.S. course is tied specifically to Patriots history, chapter by chapter, header by header, and it comes with 22 videos, high production videos of me teaching the chapter with all sorts of slides, background, pictures, maps, charts, graphs, the whole ball of wax. And that is available right now for $229 on the website. No license to expire. It's yours as long as you want it. It's a one-year course meant to be taught at around 3 hours a week. But if you don't get through it by the end of a year, no big deal. It's yours to keep for as long as you need it, for as many kids as you want. For those of you dealing in co-ops or school situations, we have no way to police this, but we ask that you buy a copy of the curriculum for every 5 students who use it. So if you have 10 students in a co-op, please buy 2 curriculum. It's only fair. But again, it's the honor system, so we can't come around like the FBI these days and go, you're stealing Patriots history. And of course, I have a world history course, starts in 1775 and goes through the present. It is 15 units, not 22, because the units are longer. And it comes with 15 videos, and the videos are longer. So take a look at that. I urge you, if you're going to do both, do the U.S. first, then the world history course. There's a little overlap in terms of the 4 pillars concept, but also the world course has a lot of reading in the second semester, two books, Patriots History, The Modern World of Volume 1 and Volume 2, which are available on our website for $9.99 each in PDF form. But I also want to bring to your attention the VIP subscription, which is only $69 a year, $6 a month, and you get access to almost 2 years worth of my Wild Wednesday webcast, where I would do for 45 minutes a lesson on a different aspect of history, from the Crusades to knights in armor, to the JFK assassination, to Napoleon, to the World War II in the Pacific, on and on and on. So you would get all 40 of those. You would get another 4 ongoing lessons, including Reagan, the American president, the horrible history of Howard Zinn, Reagan's, I think, 22 lessons, Zinn's 3 lessons, enduring lessons on life and citizenship, which is really good, because in about 6 or 7 minutes, I explain the purpose of money, the connection between time and money. I explain capitalism and socialism in ways that I guarantee you haven't heard it done before. So you want to look at that enduring lessons series. I have a new one starting up that I just put up about 7 videos called Integrity, and I'll be looking at a number of different people who showed exceptional integrity over their lives, including Winston Churchill is my opening act here, and old Winnie so far has about 7 videos up. Point is, on the subscription service, you get ongoing video lessons. It's like your own little history channel with ongoing lessons and a wide variety of things. And in addition, you get my ebook, All Thumbs: How Our Obsession with Cell Phones and Devices is Damaging Our Kids and Rearranging Our Lives. So just take a look at that. I'm sure that book, it's not a ban your phone or burn your phone book. It's how to control your phone. And then if you're more interested in political stuff, take a look over at my other website, The Wild World of Politics. Right after this show, I do about a 15 to 20 minute commentary every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on ongoing political issues, polling, the primary races, the general race, economics, other ongoing aspects of political life. And because it's not on YouTube, I can get away with saying things there that I can't get away with saying here, if you catch my drift. So check that out. Same price, $69 for the Insider, and you can get my thrice weekly political commentary. You get, again, 5 or 6 ongoing lesson programs, including the new one that's up on that side only, which is A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. I've got 5 or 6 videos up on that. There will eventually be about 20. So check those out. All right, let's get started. And we are on page 169. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. The election of 1800 marked the second peaceful transfer of power. The first was 1796 in the brief history of the new nation. Hold on for a second. Okay, I see what happened. So we wrote 1788. I understand what we wrote there, meaning we went from the Articles to the Constitution. In the brief history of our new nation, perhaps it was the magnanimity of this moment that led Jefferson in his 1801 inaugural address to state, quote, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." Reading the entire text of the speech 200 years later, however, it appears that most of the audience members must have all been Republicans. He wasn't too conciliatory toward Federalists. Far from the revolution of 1800 that some historians have labeled the election, Jefferson and his followers did not return the nation to radical Whig precepts of anti-federalism and the Articles of Confederation era, although they did swing the political pendulum in that direction. Jefferson's 2 terms in office from 1801 to 1809 did, however, mark a radical departure from the 1789 to 1800 Federalist policies that preceded them. By the time he became president, the first to function from Washington, D.C., Jefferson had already lived a remarkable life. Drafter of the Declaration, lawyer, member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, governor of Virginia, minister to France, secretary of state, the sage of Monticello, as he would later be called, had blessed the nation richly. His personal life, however, never seemed to reflect the tremendous success he had in public. When his wife died in 1782, he immediately was left melancholy, and whereas he still had daughters upon whom to lavish affection, he re-immersed himself in public life thereafter. His minimal religious faith offered little solace. Monticello, the mansion he built with his own hands, offered little pleasure and produced an endless stream of debts. He founded the University of Virginia and reformed the curriculum of William and Mary College, introducing medicine and anatomy courses. A slaveholder who freed only a handful of his chattel, Jefferson is said to have fathered children with his slave Sally Hemings. But the modern DNA testing has proven only the strong probability that one of the Hemingses, Easton, was fathered by one of the 24 Jefferson males in Virginia at the time, including at least 7 whom documentary evidence suggests were at Monticello at the time. So it is simply wrong that Jefferson fathered a slave child. We don't know that. That's going way, way beyond what the DNA evidence allows anyone to say. All we know is Thomas Jefferson could have been the father, as could 23 other male Jefferson relatives. This left only a handful of candidates, most noticeably Thomas's brother Randolph Jefferson, but archival evidence putting Thomas at Monticello on the key dates neither supports nor rules out naming him as Easton's father. Whatever occurred in Jefferson's personal life, the public policy slowly advanced the United States toward abolition. His signature on the bill abolishing the slave trade did have a significant impact and help prevent the further growth and profitability of this obnoxious business. The public political Jefferson was more consistent. His first inaugural address set the tone for the Jefferson that most Americans would recognize. He called for a return to revolutionary principles, strict construction of the Constitution, state power, quote, the surest bulwark against anti-Republican tendencies, as he called it. Culture, with commerce as its handmaiden, and in an obvious reference to the reviled Alien and Sedition Acts, quote, freedom of religion, press, and person. He would be just sickened at what's going on today with the FBI and the Department of Justice in terms of personal rights and liberties. These were not empty phrases to Jefferson, who waited his whole life to implement these ideals, and he proceeded to build his administration upon them. Albert Gallatin, Jefferson's Secretary of the Treasury, was the point man in the immediate assault on Alexander Hamilton's economic policy and the hated 3 reports. Gallatin, a French immigrant to Pennsylvania, an anti-federalist and an early target of Federalist critics of so-called alien radicals, had led the attack on speculators and stock jobbers. A solid advocate of hard money, balanced budgets, and payment of the national debt, Gallatin was one of the most informed critics of Hamilton's system. With the Republican Congress passing enabling legislation, Gallatin abolished internal taxation and built a Treasury Department funded solely by customs duties and land sales. So there's no more of that 3/5 tax. Remember, the constitutional compromise said slaves would be taxed. 3 out of 5 slaves would be taxed for purposes of representation and taxation. There goes the taxation. The Federalist annual $5 million budgets were slashed in half, and the Treasury began to pay off the national debt by 1810. 40 million of the 82 million debt had been paid. Imagine that, paying off the national debt. Despite Jefferson's extravagant purchase of the Louisiana Territory, which was about $15 million. Lest one credit the Jeffersonians of genius or administrative magic, this success was to a large degree Hamilton's legacy. He, Hamilton, had stabilized the money supply by insisting that the debt holders would, in fact, be repaid. The blessings of the Federalist years included soaring commerce that would support the customs base, Jay and Pinckney's treaties at work, the stable frontiers and safe oceans, the pacification of the Indians, and the state of peace, the result of Washington and Adams's commitment to neutrality, all provided the undergirding that allowed revenues to flow in while expenses were kept relatively low. In other words, Jefferson's ability to pay off the debt was largely due to Washington and Adams and their policies. Land, already abundant, would become even more so after Jefferson's acquisition of Louisiana, and this too gave the Republicans the freedom to pursue budget cutting, as the revenues of land sales were enormous, giving the land office plenty of work for decades. More broadly, though, the nation had already adopted critical business practices and philosophies that placed it in the middle of the capitalist revolution, including sanctity of contracts, competition, and adoption of the corporate form for business. This foundation of law and good sense guaranteed relative prosperity for a number of years. As we will see, these are all the result of Chief Justice John Marshall and his Supreme Court. Jefferson wanted to benefit his natural constituency, the farmers, just as Hamilton had befriended the bankers. Jefferson did not believe in any direct subsidies to farmers, but he tasked Gallatin to help the agrarian interests in other ways, specifically in reducing transportation costs. Congress, quote, experimented after 1802 with financing Western roads from the proceeds of federal land sales, and Congress in 1806 ordered Jefferson to build a national road to Ohio, called the National Road. Even Jefferson inquired as to whether Congress could do anything else to, quote, advance the general good with, quote, the pale of its constitutional powers. But in 1806, Jefferson became even more aggressive with internal improvements, recognizing a federal role in, quote, the improvement of the country, unquote. It is significant that Jefferson, like Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun after him, saw the physical uniting of the nation as a means to diffuse the slavery issue. Calhoun of South Carolina, a leading advocate of slavery, would argue in 1817 that Congress was under, quote, the most imperious obligation to counteract every tendency to disunion, interesting, and to, quote, bind the republic together with a perfect system of roads and canals. This, by the way, is going to be one of the big Whig platforms that internal improvements, harbors, roads, canals will join the nation together. In an extensive report to Congress, finally delivered in 1808, Gallatin outlined a massive plan for the government to remove obstacles to trade, proposing that Congress, now listen to this, fund a 10-year, $20 million project. You remember how much the entire national debt was? 82 million, and they paid off 40 million. So you're asking for something that's 1/4 the entire national debt. Proposing that Congress fund a 10-year, $20 million project in which federal government would construct roads and canals itself, or provide roads for private corporations to do so, loans to private corporations to do so, Gallatin detailed 16 million in specific programs. He wanted a canal to connect the Atlantic coast and the Great Lakes, and included more than 3 million for local improvements. Jefferson endorsed the guts of the plan, having reservations only about the possible need for a constitutional amendment to ensure its legality. But for the small government Republicans, it constituted a breathtaking project, amounting to 5 times all of the other government outlays under Jefferson. The project showed the selectivity of Jefferson's predisposition to small government. He concluded in 1807 that, quote, embracing every local interest and superior to every local consideration was competent to the selection of such national projects, and only, quote, national legislature could make the final decision on such proposals. So Jefferson very much comes across, in this case, as a big government guy who wants to spend a lot of money. So don't give me the small government Thomas Jefferson stuff. However, Jefferson and Gallatin justified their plan. It remained the exception to the Republican small government budget cutting character. Let's see. Oh, I missed a line. Jefferson concluded in 1807 that embracing every local interest and superior to every local consideration was competent to the selection of such national objects, and only the national legislature could make the final determination on such projects. Madison did not dissent at the time, but a decade later, as president, he vetoed the bonus bill, which called for an internal improvement amendment. However, Jefferson and Gallatin justified their plan. It remained the exception to the Republican small government budget cutting character, not the norm. While Gallatin labored over his report, most of which would eventually be funded through private and state efforts, not the federal government, Jefferson worked to roll back other federal spending. The radical 2.4 million reduction of the national budget, one can hardly imagine the impact of a 50% budget cut today, sent shockwaves through even the small bureaucracy. Gallatin dismissed all excise tax collectors and ordered every federal agency and cabinet office to cut staff and expenditures. Only a few years later, James Madison conducted the business of the Secretary of State with a staff of 3 secretaries. Then half of the remaining federal employees were replaced with Jeffersonian Republican appointees. The Federalist bureaucracy, in which a mere 6 of 600 federal employees were Republicans, was thus revolutionized. The Department of War is the next target for the budget slashers. Jefferson and his followers had never been friendly to the military establishment, and they cut the Navy nearly out of existence, eliminating deep-sea vessels and maintaining only a coastal gunboat fleet, virtually all of which were sunk in the War of 1812. With the Northwest Indian Wars concluded, the Republicans chopped the Army's budget in half. Troop strength shrank from 6,500 to 3,350 men in uniform. To further eliminate what they thought was an overly Federalist officer corps, the Jeffersonians launched a radical experiment, a military academy to train a new, quote, Republican officer class, thus producing a supreme irony in that the United States Military Academy at West Point became a great legacy of one of America's most anti-military presidents. Finally, Jefferson sought to change the alleged undemocratic tone of the Federalist years through simplicity, accessibility, and lack of protocol. The president literally led the way himself, riding horseback to his March 1801 inauguration instead of riding in a carriage like Washington or Adams. Remember, Adams got out of town before the inauguration, just as Trump did with Biden for obvious reasons in 2020. Jefferson replaced the White House's rectangular dinner table with a round one at which all guests would symbolically at least enjoy equal status. Widower Jefferson ran a much less formal household than his predecessors, hosting his own dinner parties and even personally doing some of the serving and pouring of wine. The informality distressed the new British ambassador to the United States, which, upon paying his first visit to the White House, his knock upon the door was not answered by house servants, but rather by the President of the United States himself, dressed in a house robe and slippers. On another occasion, there was a small kerfuffle caused by the fact that Jefferson wore slippers to a formal dinner, and as I recall, it was the French, could have been the British, anyway, but some foreign delegation took great offense to the fact that he wasn't properly dressed, and it almost kind of blew up into a thing, and then finally they just said, oh well, it's Jefferson, let it go. All right. Let's stop there for today. We will pick up next time with John Marshall and his court rulings, which were very important to setting the stage for commercial business. And so Jefferson, during this time, not only did he expand and enhance business by purchasing Louisiana Territory, it opened up all this new business, new opportunities. Not only did he try to create transportation accessibility, the greatly enhanced business, even though all of it wasn't built, but also because of Adams's Federalist appointees to courts, especially John Marshall, the courts got to be much more favorable to business during this time and set up a business structure that proved to be one of the best in the world. So we'll pick up with that next time. And as I said, remember, at the Wild World of History website, there is a link to the concept trailer. We're trying to turn Patriot's history into a Sound of Freedom type feature film. It's going to be great. I'm pretty sure I know what the pilot episode is going to look like. We haven't put it down. The screenplay is being written right now, but I need your help. It's not cheap. Merely to produce a 2-scene pilot to take to the makers of The Chosen and Sound of Freedom, Angel Studios, will cost about $60,000. And we're doing good. I'm getting lots of support, but I could use more. So go to the Wild World of History and check out the Buy Larry a Coffee. And if you like the trailer, buy me a coffee or 2 or 10 or 20, however many you wish, at $5 each. We could certainly use a lot of coffees to get to $60,000. So help us out. And I will see you guys back here on Monday.